The Ain't No Fang Podcast. From Arizona Sports, Ain't No Fang.
The Arizona Diamondbacks have an award winner in town, a coach that's getting extended, and an offseason that we need to preview. Steve Zinsmeister, Alex Weiner on the Ain't No Fang Podcast. Thanks for checking it out. We did a ton of coverage for the World Series run. Thank you for all of your efforts in doing that and covering the team even on the road. So it's kind of time to start talking about the season that was and the season that is to come. Last night, Corbin Carroll officially becomes the NL Rookie of the Year. Was there ever any doubt that was going to happen?
I mean, after May, no. Not really.
He kind of
there was some early oh, what if James Outman versus Corbin Carroll is a great race? And then it came pretty quickly obvious. So.
I think both leagues kind of experienced that with Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll in the NL respectively.
I mean, fifth time ever that we've had unanimous Rookies of the Year for both leagues. First time since 2017 when it was Cody Bellinger and Aaron Judge. So it's typically bodes pretty well for the players who are involved in that.
And both the guys that you would have picked preseason to win the award, assuming that both of them got the opportunities. I mean, Corbin came up last year, so we knew he would be in the mix. Gunnar Henderson, we kind of felt the same about. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess it's a little bit telling that at the party for Corbin Carroll last night, which I assume was either at his house here in Arizona or somewhere, Corbin Carroll was surrounded by a lot of teammates. Alec Thomas we saw, Pavin Smith was there, Brandon Pfaadt was there. It looked like Evan Longoria was there in the background. Really cool to see Corbin Carroll surrounded by his teammates, even though the season is over and things didn't end the way we wanted, certainly. It was really cool to see them all there to support him in that moment. Yeah,
and Torey Lovullo gave a speech that MLB ended up posting. I think Torey was wearing a Team USA Devin Booker jersey.
Even cooler.
Pretty sure it was the 15. So, just kind of cool to see just everybody kind of still around each other in the offseason celebrating a big moment. I mean, we'll see what happens with the rest of these awards. Zach Gallen's the only other finalist, and he's up for Cy Young potentially. We'll see if it's him or if it's Blake Snell. See if that Jeff Passan tweet was in order or not. But, yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool to see everybody together. I mean, it was a great season for Corbin, but for, organizationally to kind of know who some of your building blocks are, not only just making it to the World Series, but like kind of going forward. And Corbin Carroll, because if you remember, like he really didn't have much MLB experience and wasn't a proven MLB player when he signed that extension. He had a month change of MLB experience and he showed a lot of really good flashes, but they took a gamble on his, I guess, character and how he would develop as a Major League Baseball player. And he, paid them back tenfold. And part of that is also getting them another draft pick, which they get from him winning the Rookie of the Year. So, which is, a new thing from the 2022 collective bargaining agreement. So, not only is this such a cool achievement for him personally and for the team to have, a Rookie of the Year kind of leading them into the future, but it also gets them another potential asset.
Do you think that the success of Corbin Carroll this past season, the year after his September call-up, does that have any sort of impact on how the team might handle somebody like Jordan Lawler, who got a call-up in September, didn't play a lot? I want to say he had like 20 to 30 at-bats in September. He was on the playoff roster, but didn't really get called upon very much, if at all, really, in some of the series. Do you think that the success of Corbin Carroll has any impact whatsoever on how they handle Jordan Lawler moving forward?
Handle in what sense?
Like having an impactful role to start the season.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I personally don't even think he'll be on the opening day roster if they don't have a role for him to play on an everyday team, because I think he stands to benefit more and grow more from having everyday at-bats in AAA, in my opinion, than sitting on the bench the way he did in the postseason for this team. So unless you find another third baseman or whatever the case may be, do they try to find a role for him because it worked so well with Corbin Carroll?
I think if you try to apply what Corbin Carroll did as a rookie to everybody else, you're playing a little bit of a fool's errand. Yeah. I mean, it was a special rookie season, and he was the opening day starter in the outfield and kind of worked his way up. I think he was hitting seventh, and then he continues to work his way up until he's the everyday leadoff hitter against right-handed pitching. For Lawler, he played 16 AAA games, and then, you're right, it was sort of a part-time, tried him a little bit more regular early, and then kind of pulled back on him a little bit down the stretch of the season. I'm not sure how I don't think the Corbin experience is going to impact what they do with Lawler. I think it's just, how he looks coming into spring training, how he looks in spring training, and then you make that decision later. And, as far as like contract is concerned, all that kind of stuff. So that's not something Mike Hazen is going to answer. He was asked about it at the GM meetings, if like, oh, Corbin's success means like, oh, would you do this with other younger players? That's not something he's going to say publicly, but there is a group of young players he said that they would like to keep around. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe keep a closer eye on Gabriel Moreno, somebody who has kind of proven himself as a major league starting catcher and is only 23 years old, coming off of, his first like full major league season. So it's something to keep an eye on for sure, but it's not something we're going to get total answers to unless it happens.
Corbin's situation was pretty peculiar in a lot of ways too, because he had the year that he spent injured where he was still in Arizona, going to games constantly and in communication with guys like Lovello and their entire staff. So it was almost like he was a part of the team even when he wasn't. There was also the 2020 COVID year where there was no minor league season, so he was in Arizona training at the training facility. So all of these things are just things that are different in the Lawler storyline. He just hasn't been around as long. And so I'm with you. It probably doesn't impact things all that much. And if you're a contending team that now has expectations because you just went to the World Series, how many 22, 23-year-olds do you really want to rely on? I think it's time to add veteran presence rather than maybe relying too heavily on a bunch of young guys who just haven't proven themselves yet. I think Lawler's going to play a role on this team at some point this next season. I think there's no question about that. They want that. Assuming that he's not traded for some huge name or whatever the case may be, which we can get into if you want to. Torey Lovello, we talked about, was speaking at Corbin Carroll's event last night. Torey got himself a nice contract extension after the season. I think it's well-deserved. I was a little surprised it didn't line up perfectly with Mike Hazen's contract extension, but as we've seen in the Valley and in Arizona sports, sometimes it can be troubling if you do line up long term for your coach and front office.
I wonder what you could possibly be referencing.
I'm, of course, referring to the Arizona Cardinals. But what did you think of the contract extension, the amount of time that they're going to ask Torey to be here? And this is already the guy who holds the record for longest tenured manager in Diamondbacks history. Yeah,
the extension wasn't, it was something that you were just kind of waiting to happen because
he went to the World Series.
Right after the season ended, too, Hazen said in a press conference that, who Torey Lovello is managing long term isn't going to be much of a question for him. Like that was going to be clearly high up on the list, and they got it done within a week of the season ending for them. So high on the radar as far as like what to do this offseason list. And yeah, you're right. Coming off of a huge year, they stuck with him, literally through thick and thin through, 2020, 2021. Into 2022, they gave him another 1 year extension, and then now another long 1 year extension in 2023, leading up to then this more longer term extension. So yeah, it's something different with the Diamondbacks, right? Because they haven't had a GM manager combination like this, like two guys that they're leaning on to lead the club, one in the front office, one in, on the field. And obviously Mike Hazen has his staff and Torey has his staff, but like that sort of continuity in leadership for this long. And now it's going to be, if both of those guys, play out their contracts, at least a decade with both of them in charge, and more so for Hazen. So it's different, but, they clearly saw sort of a vision of where they were heading, where they got to, and the fact that not only they make the World Series, but they just took another step forward as a franchise this past year, even if they didn't make the World Series, but getting back into the contention, getting back into the postseason, putting yourself in position to take one of those wild card spots, and then anything can happen. That's such a big deal for them. And so to kind of keep everybody moving forward, I think that was just sort of the natural step here.
I think it's fair to say that the World Series, the way that it went, exposed some of the weaknesses of the way the roster was constructed for the Diamondbacks. This was not a perfect team. Nobody ever thought they were. I still don't think they were.
84 games.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a good team, but yeah, flawed.
They had their issues, and I think that they mostly overcame them in the first three series of the playoffs. And the World Series, they couldn't overcome some of them, such as Mike Hazen has talked a lot about how he wished he had gotten a fourth starter that they could have relied on for some of those. Instead of bullpen games in Philadelphia and in the World Series, they could have potentially had a fourth starter to rely upon. That's going to be a need in the offseason. They didn't get a lot of production at all out of third base for the majority of the season. That's going to be a need in the offseason with, I assume, Evan Longoria either retiring or leaving. And then they've got 2 right-handed hitting outfielders who are veterans who are in their 30s now and are going to hit the free agent market or already have hit the free agent market.
I think Gurriel's 29. But yeah,
okay, but he'll be 30,
yeah.
I think, by opening day.
And then Pham is 35, 30,
right.
36, yeah.
So you've got these needs that we know, starting pitcher, one if not multiple. I actually feel pretty good about the bullpen, all things considered, but we could talk about that. Third base is a big hole, and then right-handed hitting outfielders. What is the biggest need for this team as they now have higher expectations going into 2024?
It's an interesting question because you want to say starting pitching right off the bat, obviously, because of where you're at as far as, you know, you have Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly on the top of this rotation, and that's going to be that way the next couple of years. Kelly's in his mid-30s, but he's still signed for a couple more seasons with a club option for 25. Gallen still has a couple more years of team control left. And then after that, Brandon Pfaadt, their young top pitching prospect who came up and is going to be somebody who they're going to be relying on going forward. Then you have like a decent amount of depth, but nobody who's really grabbed it yet, right? Ryan Nelson is one of those guys. Terrific in the World Series and really saved them for one of those games, but, you know, had an up and down year as a regular starting pitcher. Tommy Henry got hurt. You know, mostly did his job throughout the season, but yeah, he's another guy in that mix. So is Slade Ciccone. Dre Jameson just got Tommy John surgery, so he's not really going to be in the mix, at least for most of next season. But they have a bunch of options that they could work with there. Blake Wellston, Bryce Jarvis, but it's nobody who's really grabbing a hold of a major league roster spot and kept it. So that's where you kind of look at, okay, they have, like, if they wanted to have a 5-man rotation with any one of those guys, they could do it. But now, you know, having a veteran starter is something that they want to add and somebody who they can bank on. And we could talk about some of the names who are available. I think it's a pretty deep class, but granted, everybody needs starting pitching, so it's going to be pretty competitive. Third base, a little different because the answers aren't as obvious as it stands right now with the depth, because it's Emmanuel Rivera and Jace Peterson, neither of whom was a league average hitter this past season. Rivera's a very good defender, but that's an area to look at. You mentioned Longoria. We don't know if he's playing next year or not. And behind them, you know, you kind of have to go a little bit deeper into the farm system. Like Ivan Melendez and Davison De Los Santos are both, you know, well-regarded prospects who can play third base, but they haven't gotten past AA yet. So those aren't guys who you're going to like rely on necessarily, at least not next year. So I don't know. And then obviously you mentioned the right-handed outfield. So I feel like offense might be where they have fewer answers and need to address more direly, even though I think with the starting pitching, that's somewhere that they can kind of take you far and you can kind of piece it together with bringing in a couple more veterans with, you know, outfield and third base. So, but all three are needs, and, you know, they're 3 legitimate holes that they're going to have to address at some point.
So owner Ken Kendrick said on Arizona Sports, and I'm not remembering the exact language, but I think he said he's willing to add a not insignificant amount of money to the payroll for next season, if I'm remembering right.
They had an unplanned economic windfall from making the World Series, which puts them in position to potentially not, you know, raise the payroll by not insignificant amount.
Not insignificant, which to me means they're willing to add a little bit, but I wouldn't say that means we can go from roughly $120 million. I don't even know what the
they were 21st in payroll. Do they go up to 17th?
Right, like kind of league average. I mean, that's kind of what I expect. Like, could you go from 120 to 150? Maybe.
And with so many of your younger players who are contributing, making, you know, less than sort of market value at this point.
For sure.
Does it give you more opportunity to spend more in the short term to fill some of these holes with veterans?
And then the question is, and again, we don't even know the answer to the question of like how much money do they have to spend this offseason if we're just looking at free agency. Obviously, trades are going to play a role too. They're harder to predict though. But if you have this pool of money to work with to solve those 4 holes in the roster we just talked about, 2 right-handed hitting outfielders is probably what you're going to need. A starting pitcher, at least one, and then third base. How do you go about allocating those resources in the free agent market the way that it's designed, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of high-end starting pitching, but are you really in the market for a $25 to $30 million a year guy like a Blake Snell, who will probably win the Cy Young over Zach Gallen, or an Aaron Nola, who we saw in the NLCS, or one of those big names? Can you afford that? But then what is that opportunity cost, where now all of a sudden, instead of being in the Matt Chapman or Candelario business at third base, now you're having to look in the bargain bin, essentially. So it's an interesting equation of trying to figure out where can we allocate these resources and how much do we really have to spend.
Yeah, no, that's going to be the question of the offseason, right? I mean, just like just how competitive are you going to be for the guys at the top? Because yeah, with the pitching, there are guys sort of in that second and third tier who would make a lot of sense. Like, if you don't go for Blake Snell or, Yamamoto, could you go for Seth Lugo or Michael Wacha? Could you go for Kenta Maeda or somebody who you're counting on maybe bouncing back, like Lucas Giolito or Jack Flaherty? And, Hazen said he'd rather have somebody you can bank on, but they're going to be, open to, a lot of different possibilities with the starting pitching. So, if you get outbid with one of the top guys, does that kind of trickle down? Do you use that for one of the top third basemen? Third base is not a deep position in free agency. That's one where you might look at the trade market a little bit more closely. There's the Justin Turner option. Bob Nightingale reported a link between them.
He said Turner, he was at the top of their wish list, I think.
Turner, still a very good hitter last year with the Red Sox. 800 OPS guy, hit 23 home runs. Did not play a lot of third base. So he would be more, I guess he would project more as a designated hitter who can play in the infield when you need him in a pinch. But, that doesn't necessarily solve like as an everyday third baseman, and especially doesn't give you like, oh, this guy will be our third baseman the next 2 seasons or something like that. There's Matt Chapman and there's Jaime Candelario. And then it's, can Josh Donaldson bounce back? What does Gio Urshela look like after injury? You're kind of looking at that. So that's where you kind of look to the trade market. And then with the right-handed hitting outfielders, it's, Lourdes and Tommy are going to be, one of the top names on that list. And so is Teoscar Hernandez and Jorge Soler and some of those guys. So yeah, it's sort of interesting how you kind of piece it together, what exactly they want their roster to look like, who fits the mold. Do they want somebody like Turner who can DH but also give you a little bit more flexibility and also another third baseman? Or is that where you feel like, okay, if we have the Turner bat, then we can have, Rivera start there, and if that's something we need to address later, then we can do that.
So let's try to piece together the puzzle then. If you were doing the job of Mike Hazen and trying to fill out the roster this offseason, let's say you do get one of those lesser starting pitchers, and I don't mean to say lesser to degrade from their abilities, but let's be honest, it's not like a good top of the market. Yeah. So let's say you get like a Seth Lugo in the starting rotation, and you add Turner to play DH. You go get Teoscar Hernandez in the free agent market. Now you're looking at probably capping out money wise. What does the trade market look like at third base? Like, who are some of the names around the league that you think they could go out? And if it's not going to be free agency, if it's got to be a trade, then who is it? And what are you willing to give up? And what assets do you have that other organizations would want in order to give you what you want?
Yeah, that's a good question too, as far as like the assets, because we think of the Diamondbacks as having this, deep farm system. And now it's sort of at an interesting place where you're kind of waiting for the 2022 draft class to kind of up its value a little bit, because, Drew Jones, injury-plagued season. Landon Sims was injured when they drafted him, and he's hardly pitched in the, minor leagues. And then Ivan Melendez, who has, been moving along and is in AA, but still has some like strikeout stuff, tons of power, can play first and third base, so you have some value there. And then, but as far as like having like this like surplus, and some of the pitching prospects, like Bryce Jarvis, had a much better season in 2023 than he did in 2022, but he was a first round pick who didn't perform like a first round pick and then started to find a little bit more last year. So who is sort of the valued prospects who other organizations value, who you can kind of float out there? They took off of their major league roster last year to add 2 starters. I don't know if that's something that they would plan on doing again if the opportunity presented itself. There's a less obvious surplus. You could talk about the Perdomo Lawler shortstop, but like, Lawler hasn't proven himself at the major league level yet. They expect him to be a star, but also Perdomo had this like great season, is developing as a leader, and so
could you move off Lawler? Would you trade Lawler for the right third baseman?
No, I wouldn't. But I don't know. That's a good question. I think they have to get somebody who they know is going to be there for a long time and is an established player. But like, I don't even know who that would necessarily be.
Let me throw a couple of pie in the sky ideas at you. These are like, there's almost no way that they're going to happen, but this is like out there, right?
All right.
Let's say you can convince Cleveland that they are not in contention. They just got a new manager in Stephen Vogt. They don't have a lot going for them offensively. And quite frankly, that's an organization that likes to move off of players when they're still at their peak value rather than wait until it's too late. They've done it with Corey Kluber. They did it with Francisco Lindor. They've done it with a ton of people. They'll probably do it with Shane Bieber too. Could you convince them that they're not contending with Jose Ramirez, even though they just signed that extension, which, by the way, he signed the dotted line while he was at Chase Field. I feel like that plays some sort of weird role in the universe. Could you convince Cleveland that Jose Ramirez for a Jordan Lawler, Drew Jones package would make sense?
Both of them?
Don't you think that's what it would take?
Yeah, and I don't think you do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Ramirez is 31. He's been a very, very good hitter for his entire career, and he would, undoubtedly help them in their quest to go back to the World Series next season. That's all true, but that's your two top prospects as you're kind of continuing to like build up on this young core. And I guess that's sort of like the debate is like, how much are you willing to gut it to continue adding to the major league roster now versus trying to build a sustainable winner?
It's an interesting dilemma.
It's a good dilemma. And Ramirez would be an unbelievable ad as a switch hitter, a veteran presence who already has a relationship with some of these players.
A top 20 player in the game, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, let me throw another one out there. This guy is probably equivalent to Corbin Carroll in my mind, and could play third base, could be your shortstop.
Equivalent to Corbin Carroll.
Yeah, and I'll explain that in a second, and I think you'll get it. Bobby Witt Jr. is going through contract negotiation struggles in Kansas City, another organization that is not really in contention, although they had hopes to be. I think they're going to be offloading a couple of names. I don't think they want to offload Bobby Witt Jr., but if they, for some reason,
seems too soon.
If they can't come to an agreement on a Corbin Carroll-like contract extension for him, is that a player that maybe you would throw a lot at? Because if you could sign him to a long-term deal, that's a guy that's here for a long time.
Yeah, but he still has a lot of years left for team control.
Yeah, they don't have to move him.
So I just find that far-fetched as far as him being available. Ramirez and Witt they're really interesting names. Witt, I just can't see it happening.
I said pie in the sky.
Yeah. I don't know. When I was thinking like free agent, or not free agent, but like tradable third baseman looking around the league, I don't know. Do you check in with the Angels on Brandon Drury to see if he would potentially be available?
Reuniting with a former D-back?
Yeah, but he's been excellent the last 2 seasons and can play multiple positions. I don't know. I don't see the Cardinals moving off of Nolan Arenado at this point in time, but is that someone you check in on, or are they going to try to bounce back with a revamped pitching staff into next season when they already have an offensive core that can win now? So it's interesting. Like at GM meetings, like Hazen said, usually they have a lot of conversations with other teams in October to kind of feel out the trade market, but they weren't able to do that because, they were in the World Series. So sort of their approach is a little bit different now because it starts a little bit later. So curious. I mean, they made some trades they've been very, I guess, crafty as far as making trades to help the major league roster the last few seasons. I mean, obviously the Moreno-Gurriel trade, a bunch of the trades at this past trade deadline. They tried it with the Cooper Hummel-Kyle Lewis swap, and Lewis helped them win a couple of games early, but not a whole lot else after that. So we've seen them make trades early in the off seasons before, but I'm not sure if this will look any different.
How about one last name that I'll throw at you, and this is somewhat significant based on today's news. We found out just a little while ago, it's been reported by the San Diego Padres that their owner passed away.
Yeah, Peter Seidler.
Which is very unfortunate in a lot of ways. And from a baseball standpoint, and I know that this goes far beyond just baseball, but the Padres have been in an interesting situation where they very much were going for it over the last couple of seasons, particularly in 2023. They expanded their payroll. They were willing to shell out the prospects it would take to get Juan Soto. It looks like he's likely to be moved this offseason. I don't want to talk about Soto necessarily, but Manny Machado is a name that is at third base for a division opponent in the San Diego Padres. But if the Padres and whoever takes over as the controlling owner of that team want to shed a lot of payroll, that's a player that's making a lot of money. Could you convince them to eat some of it and send you Machado and you send them a prospect package that they can set up well for the future? I know it's not likely that teams would make that kind of trade within the division, but if they're looking to shed money and you're looking to contend right away, is that a name that you might consider?
I mean, if he's available, yeah, it's something you consider. But I mean, I don't know what the likelihood of that is. Obviously, really unfortunate news about Seiler. I think he was 63 years old. There's going to be a lot going on at that organization this offseason. I don't know if moving Machado is going to be in the cards. Maybe it is. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's something that we have to get off of his contract. But it's a lot of money, still a lot of years for a player in his 30s who has still been very good. But man, you're giving me a lot of heavy hitting. Can they add this top 5 player potentially? I don't know.
I just have it in my head.
I don't know what exactly sort of the ceiling of what they're looking for in the trade market is. And
right. It's not that I think any of these are likely. I don't want it to come across like, oh, Steve just he wants to be the video game MLB The Show player where you trade up your 5 worst prospects for the best player in the league. It's just that I feel strongly that after you made the World Series, there is going to be fan pressure, league pressure for you to continue to be excellent. And they got almost nothing. I mean, they got negative WAR out of third base last year. It was the obvious hole in their lineup. I still think they need power hitting, whether that comes from the outfield or third base. I think it probably should come from third base. And I think that they have a real desire to fill that position. And I think you put it really well. The free agent market's really not the place for them to be fishing for their third baseman right now. Matt Chapman's going to get way more money than he deserves, I feel. Candelario, Gambo has said that they haven't shown a lot of interest in Candelario, and he's got selective power. He led the league in doubles a couple years ago, and I think he had 39 more of them this season. But if you're not fishing in the free agent market, you got to go big on the trade market, and I think that they should be willing to move off of some of those prospects at a time like this. I don't think waiting around for Drew Jones makes sense to me. It's nice to have the player. I like the player. Jordan Lawler, to your point, hasn't really proven anything yet, although he hasn't been given the chance to at the major league level. I still think he has a lot of developing to do too. Has the organization become more competitive than the need to wait around for those guys? I think if you can swing big and somebody's willing to move off of a really talented player, this might be the time to do it.
I think you're in a dangerous spot with some of those potential ideas, just as far as how much you're adding that inhibits your ability to add elsewhere to the payroll, and how much you're actually going to get out of the last half of the Manny Machado contract, or, the last half of the Nolan Arenado contract. Obviously, for 2023, these guys would be, really, really helpful. And I think that they need to have an approach. This is a big offseason for them because, like I mentioned earlier, they have so many young contributors who are not making, market value money, and they have the ability potentially to go out and kind of bolster this entire thing because that's just the kind of they put themselves in a great position by having this young core all ready to go. I don't know. It's sort of tough because it's sort of the balance between is Lawler going to help them win a World Series in 2025? He might. I mean, is Drew Jones going to be one of the best players in his class? He also might. He hasn't shown it yet, but there's been glimpses, and he hasn't been healthy. And when he gets healthy, is he one of those guys? And his value is probably depreciated now versus what it could be with another, if he plays a full season next year and gets to AA and plays really well. So I don't know. It's just an interesting timing for when to go, because I don't want them to not go all in necessarily. I want is not what I really mean there. I don't expect them to not want to go all in, but at the same time, there's sort of a give and take here between let's go out and get Manny Machado versus, are we getting the Manny Machado we think we're getting? And did we give up potentially a cornerstone piece of, a contending team next year for somebody who's not what he used to be? So it's a give and take a little bit. And they're going to have to be really smart about what direction they're going in.
A lot of questions as we head into a offseason that's going to have a lot of movement and a lot of expectations from fans as well. So we will see what the Diamondbacks choose to do in free agency and in the trade market as well. For Alex Weiner, I'm Steve Zinsmeister. Thank you for checking out the Ain't No Fang podcast here at Arizona Sports.